Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's story is a brand new series from a fantastic brand new writer by the name of AlienTechBlog. As ever, please do take a second to head over to the Reddit link, of which I'll leave in the description box below, and smash an upvote. It really does help him build his presence on the Reddit platform as a writer. Of course, as ever, please do like, share and comment. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR, DMT's Cryptid crew. And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's story, entitled I Recovered Tech from a Crashed Spacecraft. Part 1. Let's get straight into that. Hello, I'm a programmer, usually dabbling in Python, but most of my previous work was in C++. I also have experience in electronic engineering, but software is definitely where I excel. I live as close to the middle of nowhere as you can get. Still, I have internet, but it's still pretty spotty. Anyway, I'm here because of what happened to me almost days ago. I'm not sure how to say this, but you've likely started reading due to the title. So yeah, I guess I'll start from the beginning. I was working on a nonsensical and honestly cringe desktop widget for a client. But hey, it's a living. He wouldn't stop riding my ass about how long it was taking. But from what he expected of the damn thing, it wasn't going to be an overnight project. The guy wanted a calculator that would make a unique joke about each number under 1,000. He said it would help him get back into math, but I can't help but wonder, should he have hired a comedian? Probably. My eyes were glued to the screen. You know when you get so tired you don't really blink at all? I was at that point of the night. My head was aching, but I fixed that with a quick dose of the ibuprofen on my computer desk. I'm not sure if the headache was brought on by the lack of sleep, staring at the monitor for too long, or writing those corny, painful jokes, but I put my money on the last one. It was so gratingly tedious. Write a shitty pun, add it to a switch statement with the rest, and because I'm thorough, test it. I thought I'd flip my desk if I had to see another one of those fucking jokes again. Just when I was about to begrudgingly run the program again, I saw a light from the window behind my desk. It caught my eye, not only because I live alone, not only because it was night, but also because it seemed to be falling from the sky. I jumped from my chair, rushing to the window. It was a bright, yellowish white object. At first, I thought a plane was crashing into the woods near my house, but it was absolutely no noise. It looked like some kind of, orb. A big ball, radiating light and falling to the ground at high rate of speed. My eyes followed that thing intently, up until it vanished behind all the tall trees. It took a second or two for the noise to hit, but when it did, I nearly shat myself. Boom! That thing hit the ground so hard it shook my house. At that point, I was both horrified and curious. I stared out my window, wondering what that thing was, and debating whether I should investigate it or not. As I stared out the window, fidgeting with my hands nervously, I noticed a pretty sizable crack in my window. The sound of that impact actually damaged the glass. Sure, I was relieved that the pane of glass didn't cut my head off, but I was still worried about the glowing ball. My imagination was racing. Was it an attack on the US? Was it an experimental aircraft that the military was testing? Or maybe, just maybe, was it aliens? I thought of nearly all the possibilities. I don't think I thought of it being a meteor, because there were no flaming chunks flying off that thing. Hell, there wasn't even a trail of smoke or fire that you could see with meteors. My curiosity was eating me alive as I stared into the woods. I was waiting for something, anything to happen. I guess I anticipated grey, bug-eyed creatures to come scurrying out of the brush, but that didn't happen. Instead, I was engulfed by an eerie, anxiety-inducing silence. No movement in the woods, no lights, no unworldly gibbering, just silence. You know, we all say we won't make the mistakes that people make in horror movies, but we're all guilty of it. And with my guts full of fear and excitement, I made a decision to go investigate. If it was a downed aircraft, I'd be a hero for reporting it. If it was a UFO, then I'd get to see one up close and personal. I put on my jacket, grabbed a flashlight, and went to go see what that thing was. Hesitantly, I stepped out of my front door, analysing my surroundings for signs of danger. Every twig that I stepped on, every plane that flew by, and every gust of wind that rustled the trees made me jump. Hey, never said I was a badass. It was chilly out that night, and so I couldn't tell if my hard nipples were from the cold or from the creepy-ass atmosphere that was present. Seriously, it's never that quiet out there. There's always a pack of coyotes howling, always an owl hooting, or at least a fucking deer in heat. However, no animals seemed to be making as much as a peep that night. Anyway, I stepped up to the tree line, scanning the woods for anything to be concerned about. And seeing nothing suspicious, I took a cautious, deliberate step into the brush. Just when I thought I was in the clear to proceed, a huge, hairy, panting creature ploughed into me. I screamed, toppling over and throwing my arms around in an attempt to defend myself. Realizing that whatever it was had already hightailed it, I quickly shined my flashlight in its general location. And embarrassingly, it was just a deer. As I lied on the ground, laughing to myself as I watched the deer bolt away, I heard what sounded like a stampede emerging from the darkness. And suddenly, a plethora of deer began to sprint into view, and with a gasp, I curled up into a ball, trying not to get crushed by their powerful hooves. There were so many of them, all running in the same direction as the first one. As I listened to the frantic animals stampede around me, I thought something like, "So, this is how it ends, huh?" To my surprise, the deer passed by, not one of them crushing a bone in my body. Relieved, I cackled like a crazy person, standing back up and dusting myself off, enjoying the feeling of being alive. I almost forgot why I even went into the woods. However, when the trees lit up around me, I was promptly reminded again. I was frozen in fear, staring at my own shadow being cast on the ground. My nerves only grew more scattered as I noticed the change in temperature. Like I said, it was a cold night, and so when I felt an increasing warmth radiate against my back, I knew something wasn't right. That light, it was so bright, it was emanating heat. And slowly, I turned around, shielding my eyes from the light with one hand. As I tried to look at whatever was creating that light, the woods were, once again, swallowed by pitch dark. As I let my eyes adjust to the darkness, I began to make out the shape of something big. I knew it wasn't a rock, and I knew it definitely wasn't a tree stump. I don't know, it just looked out of place. When my eyes finally fully adjusted to the dark, I could see what created that light. A large, smooth, chrome sphere. It was halfway buried into a crater that it created, but I estimated that it was about 25 feet in circumference. I was at a loss for words, simply gazing at the mysterious object in front of me. I just could not believe my eyes. I mean, who would? I was always a healthy skeptic when it came to things like the Chupacabra, Bigfoot, and UFOs, but there it was, one of the many fabled urban legends. As I beheld the globe-like craft, a hissing sound broke me from my trance. My eyes were the size of saucers, pun intended, as I watched a door unfold from the craft. The way it opened was like butter, so smooth, so sleek. Unfortunately, the object seemed to be buried on its back, relative to the door's location. And upon closer inspection, I could see that it wasn't just a door, but also a flight of stairs. Now, I had to make an important decision. Would I just continue watching, or would I try to get inside the craft? Well, I chose the latter. Cautiously, I approached the craft. Each step closer to me was a gamble. How did I know there wouldn't be some creepy, gangly, possibly carnivorous creature waiting for me inside? Quick answer: I didn't. The childlike curiosity, the burning desire to experience something that few, if any people, had experienced before, it all took over me. Against my better judgment, I placed my left clammy hands on the surface of the craft. I felt around for anything to grab onto, but was greatly disappointed. This thing was so fucking smooth. But as I ran my hands up and down the outside of it, I had an idea. And smirking, I wiped my sweaty hands on my jacket, drying them off in preparation for my next move. What was my next move, you ask? Well, I just took a few steps back, eyed the craft's open door and sprinted. I jumped as high as I could, using the skin on my hands to create friction against the sphere's surface. And to my delight, it worked. I was climbing up the craft, but I had to be fast. As I reached the open door, I began to slowly slide off. Desperate to see what was inside, I swung my right arm up to the doorway and my fingers latching on to the edge. I pulled myself up, albeit clumsily. I stood victorious. And catching my breath, I took a look at what was inside. It seemed that everything was trashed, and I mean completely ruined. And looking in from the outside alone, I could see miscellaneous broken pieces of equipment scattered everywhere. As I marveled at what I was seeing, the surface of the craft began to light up again. It was gradual, but fast as the surface began to radiate an amazing amount of heat in record time. I knew that if I just stood there, I'd be cooked by the blinding light, and so, without thinking, I jumped inside. Well, the landing wasn't pleasant at all. My arms were out in front of me as I crashed into the shattered fragments of junk. And luckily for me though, I only received a few cuts to my forearms. Anyway, I recovered pretty quick. As I got back to my feet, the extent of the damage was truly revealed. Oh, there was broken shit everywhere, but remember, the craft was effectively on its back, and so everything was out of order. There seemed to be a destroyed cockpit where I stood. Above me, dead center of the craft, a shattered cylinder of glass was there. The glass was attached to a metal base, a matching base at the top too. Inside the shattered glass, there appeared to be a small platform. It looked like it was a broken display, but a display for what? Well, that's why I began looking around for an object that could have fit the size of the platform. Carefully, I rummaged through the bits of sharp, jagged trash in an effort to find this mysterious display piece. I must have been there for 10 minutes before I made a discovery. In my hand, I held a small, cracked screen. Oddly enough, a circuit board was exposed on the back of it. I was surprised at how similar it was to the circuit boards I'd worked with in the past, and even more surprised at how untouched it was. I set the screen and its parts aside, continuing my search for the missing display piece. I spent quite some time searching, throwing and moving the destroyed junk aside, but then I found one of the most peculiar things. It was a smooth chrome sphere. It reminded me of the craft's external, and looking back up at the platform, it seemed to be just the right size to have fit there. And with a meager, exhausted fist pump, I celebrated my discovery. However, it didn't take long to realize just how heavy the chrome ball was. It could fit in the palm of my hand, but it was very, very dense. I'd say it weighed about 7 to 10 pounds. At the time, I didn't really care too much about the weight of the shiny chrome ball. No, my main priority was finding a way out of the craft. Well, first I looked for the more fascinating tech, then I thought of ways to escape the ship. Satisfied with my findings, I looked up at the still open door. My elated smile turned into a concerned frown, because now I was trapped. I mean, I knew I was trapped, but It really didn't hit me until I was staring up at my own passage to freedom. My eyes darted around the room, desperate to find anything I could use to climb out of the craft. Almost automatically, my eyes were set on a long, black, broken-off stretch of dashboard. Setting the goods I acquired aside, I made my way to the long, sturdy-looking object. Looking at it, I just knew it was going to be a bitch to lift. The frame was thick. It was about 10 feet in length and about 4 in width. And with a worried sigh, I slid my hands underneath the dashboard, positioning my legs in preparation for the weight. And taking a deep breath, I put my all into lifting that damn thing, only to have it flip over on the opposite side. Turns out, that thing was actually a piece of cake to carry. With a chuckle, I picked it up, reveling in a mutilated, mangled corpse beneath it. At first, I couldn't really tell what it was, but seeing what looked to be twisted, crumpled limbs made me do a double take. My God, was it unrecognizable. I mean, it wasn't human, so it was already unrecognizable to me, but I don't think it was supposed to look the way it did, even when it was alive. Its skin was grey, the limbs were lanky, and the head was, well, all but missing. It had a human form, so you could call it a humanoid, but it was so horrifically destroyed. Well, at least I know now that extraterrestrials have red blood too, so that's something we have in common, aside from similar circuit boards. Anyway, I assumed the creature died in the impact. There was no way that the surprisingly light dashboard had crushed it, and so it must have been the sudden, devastating impact. It must have been thrown about when the craft collided with the ground, making it into, well, a brutalized carcass. As interesting as it was to stare at a dead alien, I really needed to head back home. I was shocked at how light the materials of the dashboard were, yet they were so strong. Eventually, I was able to get up on top of the metal base of the display, but the exit was still just out of reach. Luckily, the dashboard was so light, and I can't stress this enough. I was able to pick it back up, position it on the base of the display, and use it to climb out of the craft. Upon emerging, I noticed that the craft was no longer lit up, and so I assumed it was some kind of timer. Anyway, I used the smooth surface of the ship to slide down, all of the tech I had gathered still in my arms, and I ran back home, giggling like I had just won the lottery, but twice. When I burst through my front door, I immediately unloaded alien technology onto the couch, astonished at what was in my possession. Not only did I take the small screen with the circuit board, the dense chrome ball, but I also brought home a few other goodies. A few severed cords and wires, a small but intact chip of some sort, and, get this, another untouched circuit board. I thought of all the possibilities that these items held. I could reverse engineer the gnarled wires. I could potentially get whatever data is off that chip. I could figure out what the chrome ball is for. I could fix the small screen, and I could even see if the two circuit boards are compatible with my equipment. I think I spent a few hours inspecting the alien tech, but, like always, a long night of hard, grueling work takes a lot out of a guy. My eyelids were getting heavier by the minute, but all I wanted to do was stay awake and play with these fascinating pieces of technological advancement. My body was fighting me, and it was winning. So I did what I had to do, which was go the fuck to sleep. I gathered all of the technology off my couch and brought them to my room, stored them in the closet, and instantly crashed on my bed. The next day, I woke up to the sound of banging. In my tired, foggy-minded haze, I couldn't quite pass the information my ears were giving me. I almost drifted back to sleep until I heard a deep, gravelly voice shouting something. "It's the police!" the voice bellowed. I think I said something to the effect of, "Oh shit," and scurried out of bed, composing myself the best I could, and then answered the door. "Morning, officer," I mumbled, wiping a crust from my eyes. "Sir, were you aware of the meteor that struck nearby?" the cop asked, his attention focused on the pen and pad in his hands. My mind went directly into the spacecraft that I pillaged the previous night, but something in me felt wrong about telling this cop the truth, and so I lied through my teeth. No, officer. When and where did this happen? I replied, putting on my best concerned face. At around 12 a.m. last night. You didn't hear it? Didn't think to call anyone? The cop inquired, a look of what I could only describe as knowing in his face. Well, I got back home from a family get-together at 3 a.m, so that would explain why I didn't know. That would explain why you're just now waking up at 2 in the afternoon. Alright, I'm sorry to bother you, sir. Have a nice day. After shutting the door, my mind went right into panic mode. Why would they call that thing a meteor? Were the cops ill-informed, and if so, then why come to my door and ask if I saw or heard anything? Something about that just felt very, very off. My mind was racing, but it only got worse when I looked out my window. Not only were there countless cops near the woods, but also plenty of military vehicles. At that point, I knew what was going on. They were removing the crashed spacecraft. They know I'm the only house for several miles, and if I had admitted to knowing what I know, they would have probably either abducted or killed me. Maybe the whole outing with a family bullshit kept me safe, not only because I couldn't have seen the craft, but also because that implies that I have family that would miss me. I mean, I do, but we don't keep in touch. Stories I read about started to flood my mind. Shady government dealings, politicians making people disappear, and, of course, the Men in Black. No, I'm not talking about Will Smith. I mean the original Men in Black. And for what I've heard, these creepy-ass motherfuckers will visit people who have knowledge on UFOs, coercing them into staying quiet. I never believed in those guys, but I was also pretty damn skeptical about alien spaceships visiting Earth. And look where we are now. In a sense, my brain was open to all of the terrifying scenarios that could play out. I spent the majority of that afternoon just pacing my living room, thinking of what to do next. I thought of skipping town, getting rid of the technology, and maybe even changing my name. But I realized that I was thinking crazy. I grounded myself back to reality, telling myself things like, they don't know I saw anything, or they'll get the craft out of here and then forget all about me. After a while, my fear subsided. I was being crazy, and besides, I couldn't just give up the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to tinker with alien tech. You know, it's funny. If I hadn't seen what I saw, I would have bought that they were airlifting a meteor out of the woods. It was so comical, seeing that giant white tarp over the alien craft as they flew it away. Man, they needed to use 2 military-grade choppers to get that thing out of there. Must have been heavy, or who knows, maybe the craft was lighter than it looked. Anyway, I just sat back, drinking a cup of coffee as I watched them remove the craft from its resting place. After all was said and done, after the cavalry had left, I deemed it safe enough to get back to work. No, not my programming commission, but with the alien tech. I broke those bad boys out of the closet, viewing them again, but this time with fresh, well-rested eyes. As I gazed upon the luckiest haul of my life, I paid extra attention to the most familiar of the tech, the exposed circuit board of the rear of the small screen. The solder mask, the green layer on most earthly circuit boards. It was white. You could see white circuit boards now weld here and there, but that wasn't what caught my eye. The silkscreen, a layer that goes over the solder mask, labeling certain parts of the board, allowing people to understand the tech better. I was in a language I'd never seen before. I mean, well, that was to be expected. But I was still taken aback by the concept of a new language, completely foreign to those of us on Earth. Usually, silkscreens are white, but other colours are doable. In this case, the majority of the labels were white with the exception of one. Right in the centre, there was a red label. Next to that label, there was a tiny black switch. Of course, without knowing the inner workings of the circuit board, I didn't want to go start flicking random switches, and so I left it alone. On the top, relative to the switch, there was a board to cable connector. However, upon further inspection, I found that the cable's head was severed from the rest of the wiring. I was disappointed, but not discouraged. I carefully unplugged the head of the cable from the connector, and to my delight, both the connector and the head of the cable were intact. However, the connector's pins were oddly shaped, and the same goes for the cable head. I could feel my hopes dwindling as I inspected the pins, seeing just how strange and just how different they were from anything I'd ever seen on a printed circuit board. At that point, I had two options. I could create a completely new cable through reverse engineering, or I could try to repair the cable. I chose the latter, as I usually do. Hell, I had a hard time learning how to successfully twist and solder wires in school. Nowadays, I just buy what I need, and if it breaks, I buy another. Yes, I can get the job done with human-made cables, but what about the alien-designed ones? They had a similar, human-like design for some of their other tech, and so I just hoped and prayed that their electrical cables weren't as different. With care, I removed the rest of the cable from the inside of the small screen, and from where the other end was connected, I made an educated guess that the cable was responsible for the screen's display. It was covered with a blue plastic of some kind. It was likely a normal, standard plastic that most manufacturers use for insulation, but I still wanted to take caution. Putting on a face mask, one I got from a friend who visited Japan, I got to work on the cable. I used my pocket knife to strip the plastic from the cable. I tried my best not to damage the internals, and if I did, I probably would have cried over blowing my one chance to use this technology. Luckily for me, I was able to home in on those times in the shop class, and I got the entirety of the plastic off. I could almost hear Mr. Ashford congratulating me as I peeled off the final stretch of insulation. Disposing of the potentially harmful material, I removed my mask, using my reading glasses to examine the wiring. In that moment, I could have hung myself with those fucking wires, because they didn't use copper as a conductor. No. In my anger, I saw that they used fucking silver. And well, I gotta hand it to them. They used an even more conductive metal, but an even more expensive one for us Earthlings. In short, I was pissed. I was making good money with my programming, but I still lived in the middle of nowhere. Drive to the store. There's quite a bit of gas money for silver wire. Plus, I had just went grocery shopping and paid my bills. And that was just 2 days before the ship crashed into the woods. What little money I had left was for emergencies, but in a sense, I guess repairing alien technology was a sort of an emergency. I mean, what secrets could the circuit board hold? What insights could these otherworldly beings have? I had to know. I quickly hopped onto my PC and searched up the best deals on Amazon. And to my ever-growing rage, the best silver wire they had was $9. And don't even get me started on the shipping tax. I mean, I wasn't going to take my chances with eBay. And so I said a prayer for my bank account and ordered a fucking thing. Oh, and the wire was 50 feet long, but I only needed about 10 inches. With a sigh, I sat back in my office chair, reminding myself that even if I did successfully fix the cable, there was no guarantee that it would work. Now, I'm just waiting here, writing this down in my spare time. I still gotta finish my client's stupid joke calculator. He's been sending me the whiniest, most obnoxious messages. I told him that an important matter had come up, which wasn't a lie, and that I'd begin work again tonight. Sure, I spent some time writing this post, but I need to get this out there. I'll update when I can. The silver wiring should be here tomorrow, and when it gets here, I'll try my best to repair what I can. I have a solder and iron, a few leftover cable conduits from my previous endeavours, and so I hope that it all goes well. P.S. A cable conduit is an insulator that protects the wiring from the elements. Just thought I'd fill you in. And so I hope that all goes well. Wow. Awesomely refreshing. What a wonderful, wonderful story and a start to a series there. I spoke with the author this morning. He's currently writing part 4. and I will be knocking out probably part 2 and 3 tomorrow for you guys and girls. As ever, a big thank you to the author over on Reddit No Sleep, AlienTechBlog. Make sure you give yourselves a follow over there and hit the upvote button. As I say, it really does help them build their presence on the Reddit platform as writers. Of course, as ever, please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid crew. More and more technical issues seem to be happening, guys. I'm trying to work my way around them and currently having to record in the front room, which is a large room, so there's quite a lot of interference and background noise. I do hope that I can fix the audio and it comes out a bit crisper and clearer than what it is at the moment. But of course, as ever, guys, much love and respect, and thank you for your kind patience and support, and above all, remember, be safe, not sorry.